Hey everyone, Luke from A Taste of AZ. On today's podcast, we've got Gabe Gardner of Local First, Arizona. He runs their community kitchen, helping new businesses scale up so they can serve our local communities. Make sure to subscribe to the channel below, like the video. Let's jump into our podcast.
All right, we're all here in the comfort of our own homes, right? Am I the only one drinking a beer?
My beer's cooling down in the fridge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you a beer guy, Gabe?
Sadly, I'm not. I'm not a beer guy.
Nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that. We'll convert you, but
yeah, I appreciate that.
That. Well, dude, thanks so much for joining us. We're really excited to talk with you.
Yeah, happy to do it. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you're Gabe. You are part of Local First, Arizona.
Sure.
Gabe Gardner, what do you do for Local First, Arizona?
Golly. So I'm Gabe Gardner, and I am...
3 words or less. Sorry, 3 words or less.
Oh, shoot. I didn't know. I know it's 3 words or less. Is there going to be a quiz at some point?
Absolutely.
Gabe Gardner, I work for Local First, Arizona, and I make the food system better. It's 4 words. That's the best I can do.
Make the food system. I like it, man. I'll take that. I will take that. Yeah. Food, dude. That's what we're seeing in Arizona, right? That's what Luke and I started with beer, and we really saw this food scene really starting to explode. So, and really amazing people. Like it's almost like the antithesis of what you expect a food scene to be.
Absolutely. I was talking about this earlier today with somebody, and I've lived in Savannah, Georgia, and Pittsburgh, and in Seattle, and I grew up in Ohio and worked in restaurants and country clubs there for a long time, and I ran culinary schools, and so I've seen a lot of different food scenes around the country. And what I think, at least, I mean, Phoenix is, what I understand the most, right?
Yeah.
But broadly around Arizona, I think the food community is really tightly knit, and there seems to be, for a city of this size, Phoenix, there seems to be a smaller group of people that are doing interesting, progressive things, but they work really closely together and they push forward this idea in really cool ways. And there's not to flag on any of those other cities, right? But there tends to be some infighting in those other places. And I don't see that here. It's really kind of this collective, we're all in it together kind of vibe.
Yeah.
It is really interesting as somebody who just likes to go out to eat and have good food and work with interesting chefs and be inspired by entrepreneurs doing their thing.
Yeah. Well, it's reassuring when then the industry that you get into is actually like, oh shit, this is actually cool. Like these people are nice.
Right.
Like, the opposite sucks, right? It's like, God dang it, I spent all this money. These people are assholes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, where did food start for you? So where did your love for food begin?
Yeah. When I was growing up in Ohio, my dad owned a bar and grill. It was more of a bar at night, more of a restaurant during the day. And I was made to wash dishes because I didn't have a choice either. Go wash dishes, And I was 13. I was like, yes, sir. And so I started doing that, and I worked in different restaurants throughout high school. And then my parents sat me down and they said, well, you have to go to culinary or you have to go to college. What do you want to do? And I had given it zero thought. I had long hair, just, playing guitar and listening to punk rock.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I like to cook. I'll go to culinary school. And the reason that cooking seemed attractive to me, and I make this joke all the time, but the reason it seemed attractive was I watched these line cooks in the restaurants that I was working at, and they got to smoke a bunch of cigarettes and hit on cocktail waitresses. And I was like, well, that seems like a pretty good job. I'm good at smoking cigarettes. I'm not so good at hitting on cocktail waitresses, but I'd like to learn.
Yeah.
So,
1 out of 2 isn't bad.
Yeah. Right. 50%.
You've got the raw skills. You have the raw skills. Yeah.
Yeah, and so at 17, I went off to culinary school, and I went to culinary school in Pittsburgh, and I guess the rest, as they say, is history. I did an internship at a fancy hotel, and I worked a bunch of high-end French restaurants, and I was executive chef at an Italian place, and blah, blah, blah. And then I started working in culinary schools.
This was all in Pittsburgh?
A lot of it was, and then
Okay.
I came back to Ohio, Cincinnati, which is kind of near where I grew up. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, about 45 minutes north. And then I started teaching at culinary schools, and I taught at a culinary school in Savannah and a culinary school in Seattle. And then I moved to Arizona to work and then run a culinary school here.
When did you come out here?
I've been here 4.5 years.
Okay. And that seems to be about the time that the food scene has really started to kind of hit its stride, right?
Yeah. I think I don't know what was going on here 6 years ago.
You brought it.
But from what I
brought
hear,
it, man.
Yeah. Sure. That's giving me entirely too much credit, right? My ego doesn't need that, but I appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Well, it's interesting. We talked about this because I'm from Ohio as well, right? I'm from the other side, but I grew up. I say the other side. I'm from the other side of the tracks, kind of, yeah. But Pittsburgh was an hour away, so that's where my mom's family lives. So that's the city that I got the most from, right? And I always had a lot of respect for Pittsburgh because it had great sports teams. It had great food, like the food in Pittsburgh, like Permane Brothers and all that stuff.
Permane Brothers, yeah.
Dude, I miss getting French fries on a chicken salad. Like whatever happened to that, right?
Right.
Yeah, I used to order that when I moved out here. I'm like, can I get a side of fries? And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm putting it on a salad. Like,
who is this guy?
Yeah. But that's cool. That's an interesting city because it's a blend of art and culture with like the hardest workers in the country, some of the hardest workers in the country. But so you come to Arizona, right? And it's 147 degrees out, right?
Approximately, sure.
Midwest boy, right? What was that like for you to make that adjustment?
Well, I
have you? Maybe you haven't.
No. I love it. Of the places I've lived, it's absolutely my favorite place that I've lived.
Awesome.
I moved to Arizona in like the third week of July, and I moved here by myself. I had all my stuff shipped here from Seattle in a truck, and it was one of the things they drop off the pod and you have to unload the stuff all by yourself. Yeah. And it was just me. I didn't know anybody. And I was like, I've made a bad choice. Right out of the gate. This is a pull. I immediately regret this decision.
Then you get I picture this in movies. So I don't mean to interrupt you, but I picture a movie scene where you're like, what am I doing? You're like, all right, you know what? I'm going to do this. And then you go to grab the handle of the trailer and you burn your hand.
Yeah. It wasn't dissimilar from that.
Yeah.
And, but then here's what I found out was that, 7 months out of the year, 8 months out of the year, it's perfect here.
Yeah.
And I like old cars and I like motorcycles and I like being outside and you can do all that stuff.
Yep.
And, you can't do that in Seattle. Seattle, you got about 3 months out of the year that are perfect.
Yeah. What do you think? Because you love being in Arizona now. I mean, being with Local First, that's a big, in my eyes, it's a big step because it's integrating not just like culinary, but now it's integrating like the state, like the local business, right? So what do you think that the places you've been, Pittsburgh, Seattle, Savannah, what do you think that brings to this?
I guess an appreciation for the things and how people do things in other parts of the country. And so maybe a unique perspective as far as like problem solving and helping restaurants specifically and businesses more broadly pivot and to grow. But then also I think it brings a pretty good appreciation for what Arizona is and that it's different from those places. Yeah. And I think a passion to help those businesses thrive and to grow.
Gotcha. Yeah. That makes sense because it's there's similarities, right, across the board, right? Each region has their own ingredients. Each region has this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But bringing like, oh well, shit. Well, this is how they streamline that process in Georgia
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, right? You
Right.
know, so bringing all that, and I think I don't know. My experience is limited, so I think Arizona is just the most wonderful place in the world, right? So I think, oh, we've got, but I feel like Arizona does a really great job of incorporating, at least over the last few years, of some of the chefs that incorporate Arizona indigenous ingredients, like kind of bringing the attention back to like, hey, like pineapple is not made to grow in Phoenix, you know? So
Right.
which is cool. It's cool to see farmers doing, you know, being innovative, right? But it's also cool to see like, hey, this is what was meant to be grown in this part of the earth.
Right. And that attention to regionality is something that I think has comes and goes as far as culinary goes. I mean, Alex Waters in the 70s and 80s did it, and then it kind of fell out of favor. And then I think Sean Brock, who's a chef from the South Carolina, probably, I don't know, 10, 12 years ago, dating myself a bit, really put back into vogue this idea of what grows well in my region, and let's celebrate that.
Yeah.
And it's nice to see Arizona chefs, I mean, not jumping on the bandwagon, but just appreciating the fact that this is a incredibly unique region.
Mm-hmm.
And the shockingly, when I moved here, the farming is really robust. And there's a lot of really interesting produce, and we're really good at growing a lot of stuff. One of the breakdowns that I see in that system is we grow a lot of stuff that leaves the state. And it's, you know, I talk about like farm to table a lot, and it's not as easy as I own a restaurant and I'm just going to call up a farm and they're going to deliver lettuce to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Even if the farm is like 3 miles away, you know, if you're a restaurateur in Yuma, you're surrounded by fields of lettuce, but try to get that lettuce in your restaurant, right? Because that's all owned by big multinational conglomerates, and it's leaving the state, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something that I would like to change. I talk about food system change in my introduction, right? That's one of the things that I would like to change.
Yeah. Well, with the role that you've taken too, right? That's a different. Is it different than what you did before? As far as like, were you just working like on just the food side of before, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before, I mean, when I worked in restaurants and country clubs and so forth, like, I mean, I was working at for-profit institutions, and ultimately I was working real hard and cooking really a lot of food to further the financial interests of wealthy folks.
Of not you.
To be really honest about it. Yeah, of not me, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I was toiling away in kitchens and running restaurants, but I wasn't seeing a tremendous amount of financial, you know, gain from that. And then when I started working in schools, it was really gratifying to be able to pass on whatever I'd learned to other folks. And I really enjoyed that piece of it. And now to take that same idea of teaching and mentorship and apply it to small businesses and watch them grow and create personal wealth for them is really cool. You know, Local First and broadly, and me specifically, believe that if we can help entrepreneurs create personal wealth, everybody does better, right? What's the phrase? Rising tide raises all ships, right? And so if I can help the little entrepreneurs, small businesses, they go out and they hire friends and family, and 65% of the money that they're spending stays in the local economy, and there's a lot of business-to-business connections. And so I still get the opportunity to help people and to educate, which is what I'm really truly passionate about. But doing it from a different angle is really cool.
But still related to food, right?
Longest answer ever. I don't even remember what the question was. But
I don't care what the question was, man. That was beautiful. That was awesome. Yeah, yeah. No, that's great, man. That was a perfect segue into Local First, right? Like that the whole. I mean, every every aspect of what Local First does, as far as like the promotion of these local companies and kind of bringing awareness, right? You know, we've talked about, you know, joining Local First, and just, you know, looking through the website, I'm like, oh shit, that's a place that makes really good, you know, Asian sauce. Cool. All right, I'm going to buy some stuff, you know? So it's just really cool to see people, especially in a time like now, right? Time like now, you need inspiring stories. You need those Rocky type stories of like people that are, you know, the brewer from Flagstaff who's driving, you know, 3 cases of beer to Tucson because people want it, and he wants to keep doing what he wants to do. He loves it, you know? So,
and to watch those businesses interact with one another, right? So the guy's brewing beer in Flagstaff, but he's created and cultivated a personal relationship with, is it a bar, I'm assuming, in Tucson? Yeah. Right? That wants
Tap and bottle.
And so he's and so he's willing to make that, however many miles, hundreds of miles that is, right, between the two, to make that service, right?
Yeah.
You know, I've got an entrepreneur that works out of our community kitchen, that Shrubwell, that does all of the cocktails for Wilderness Brewing.
Yeah.
Right. So they put together their cocktail menu, and they supply them with all the mixers. To watch that, and I had nothing to do with that. Like, I don't take credit for that. That is simply the business acumen of the husband and wife that own Shrubwell and the brewery, right?
Yeah.
But to watch that happen, and to know where they started, is just an unbelievable feeling.
Yeah.
And it's better for everybody. It's a new, interesting, cool concept. There's, you know, the money stays local. Both businesses are you know, benefiting from it. It's all good.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, so that's a great segue into what do you do? Like, specifically, like what does a week in your for Gabe look like? I'm
now,
sure yeah,
about 38 hours of Zoom, and about another 12 hours of email. That's what I know. Gosh. So one of the things I do, so I'm the director of all the food programs for Local First Arizona. So I oversee anything that's food related for Local First. But my, I don't know if you call it my pet project, but the thing that I do most, the thing I was hired to do initially, is to operate. We have a commercial kitchen space, and I've been with Local First for a year and a half. And this commercial kitchen space is built in an affordable housing community in Mesa, right on Main Street. And this is a long story, but
go into detail, man. This is what we love. Okay. We love these stories. Yes.
So I was in school getting a graduate degree in sustainable food systems. And one of the things I had to do, one of the many things I had to do for my grad degree, was to interview a community leader. And so I interviewed Kimber Lanning, who's our executive director, and is just an amazing and inspiring woman. She started Local First. And anyway, and it's just a tireless champion of small business. And so I interviewed her, and she brought me to this kitchen in Mesa that was on the ground floor of this housing development. And it's this 2,500 square foot commercial kitchen space. And that she had brokered a deal with the developer, and they said, would you be interested in running this kitchen? And if I'm to be really honest, I don't know that they knew exactly the potential of it. And like, I walked in, and it's stainless steel, and there's, you know, a 20-foot hood, and there's a 12 burner gas range and a deep fryer. And like, that stuff to me is things that I've seen my entire career. And I said, you know, if I could have any job in the world, this would be the job that I want. And she said, oh, really? And I said, yeah. And we went our ways when I wrote my paper, and I didn't think much more about it. Except for it kept coming back into my brain. And so I started, I always say, begged her for a job. I kind of pestered her for about 2 months. And eventually she's like,
we'll cut out back. We'll cut out.
Right. This bozo again. And so she found some funding and offered me a position. And it's just been the most incredible, transformative job I've ever had. And so they gave me the keys to this place, and I'm sitting in there, and I'm like, okay, well, now what? And that was, you know, they were like, all right, this is what you wanted. Here's a kitchen. And my job was to do two big things. One was to connect with entrepreneurs and use it as a means to incubate small business growth in the food region sector. And the other thing was to do outreach for the community. So it's an income-dependent housing project, and there's 500 residents that live there, and we're given the kitchen at a reduced rate, provided that we can show community impact and outreach. So those are kind of the two big spheres of work that I attend to.
What is that? Because I could imagine how many entrepreneurs do you have like total that rotate through the kitchen?
At the moment, we have 40 businesses that use the kitchen.
Well, that's easy to juggle, right?
It's no big deal.
One in, one out, man.
Right. What I always tell people is it's like owning a restaurant, but you don't get any of the cool stuff like inviting your friends in and like buying them a bottle of wine and sending them fancy appetizers. It's like we're out of bleach. And I gotta go put a case of bleach in the trunk of my car and drive it to Mesa or whatever.
Yeah.
It's none of the cool stuff.
You can't go in the cooler and pound a Tecate, right? Like
right.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. Because none of the stuff in the cooler's mine. Anyway,
right.
So.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of people that come through there, right? Like, entrepreneur, what's the experience like for an entrepreneur? Like, right. Say I come in, I'm like, hey man, I've got like 5 seasonings or 5 dressings that I want to do. Right. How does that work?
Well, the first thing that I do is I have a kind of a consultation where I figure out whether or not the business meets our vision and our mission. So I've had people come to me, restaurants that make $1.5 million a year in revenue, and they're like, we want to use your kitchen. And I'm like, that's not really what we're trying to.
I bet you do want to use our kitchen.
Yeah, right. But what I want to do is I want to work with people that are starting with an idea, right? So the example that I say all the time is just because you make good salsa does not mean that that's a business, right?
Sure.
Right? Like you make great salsa. I make great salsa. Ask my wife, right? But I don't own a salsa business.
No.
So what we try to do is figure out the people that are a little bit beyond just an idea and help them through the hoops to scale it from I make good salsa to an actual business.
Yeah.
So EIN numbers and taxation and county permitting, which is a big thing. And where do I sell this stuff? And how do I produce it at scale and still make a profit? And so we talked about profitable menu design. And so I incubate these businesses through our restaurant startup boot camp, which is a 6-week course that takes these businesses through those kind of steps to get there. And then they start using the kitchen because they're permitted by the county and they're legal, as I say. And so that's, I think, how it works for an entrepreneur. I guess you have to ask one of them. There's 40
you're saying it out loud. You're like, shit, I hope that's right. Hey, I got to make a call. Hold on a second. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
But that is crucial, man. I've always said that. Like, it's just because you're a good baker doesn't mean you should open up a bakery. That's a small percentage of it, right? I mean, that's something I learned firsthand. I've partnered up with Luke, who has just this business mind that for me, it's just like, I'm like, all right, dude, I have this great idea, and I throw it at him, and he's like, okay, and I'm like, all right, now turn it into a business.
Well, right, but is Luke the guy who's able to say, well, how does that make money?
Yeah, absolutely.
Luke, is that what you do?
So my job in 4 words is basically doing that, saying, how does it make money?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what I think happens a lot, what happens a lot is entrepreneurs will come to me and they'll have the idea, right? I bake bread. Yeah. And I don't think that restaurants or food businesses fail because people don't know how to cook or bake or make salsa or whatever it is. I think it's all the other stuff. Like, it's not knowing that you should hire a CPA. It's not knowing what transactional privilege tax is, which I didn't know when I moved to Arizona, right? Which is just woefully boring, and I won't tell you about that if you don't know about it. But like, it's because those aren't sexy things to talk about, right? Like an entrepreneur can talk about, I make the best baguette in Arizona, or I make the best salsa in Arizona. But nobody wants to talk about, your profit and loss statement or your break-even analysis.
I've got the worst books in the state, man. Worst books in the state. Guarantee. Yeah. But that is
books. Who needs that?
So let's make an award for that. A Taste of AZ is going to do an award every year for the worst books in the state. Submit your
best food, shittiest financials. Is that it?
Exactly. We can make an acronym of it somehow. We can make it cool, But man, that's huge. That's huge because I do think that sometimes things are stifled no matter what it is in a creative sense, right? Music or whatever, food. When you just don't know how to get to that next step, right? It's almost like that, amateur fighter that just couldn't, didn't have the right trainers, whatever, but he had the most talent of all time, right?
Sure.
That's cool for you guys to be able to bridge that gap for these people,
Yeah. And then what we try to do is, what I do then ongoing is as they're growing their business, and they can use the kitchen for a period of 2 years in total, is I become an ongoing resource for them. And so so I sit down with each of the businesses every quarter. We talk about where they are as far as their goals and where they'd like to go. And the goal is through the 2 years of incubation that they're in the kitchen, that they grow to the point where they outgrow the space and they need to move on.
Yeah.
Which is a lesson that I learned. I mentioned that I was given the keys to this kitchen and I got hired at Local First, and my charge was to go out and get businesses to use this space, which I did. And so I recruited all these businesses, and I realized 8 or 9 months in that we're letting these businesses use the kitchen at a reduced rate to help incubate, start their business, but they were never going to leave. If I let you use the kitchen for next to nothing, what's the emphasis to move on? And so I had to reverse engineer this incubation thing that now eventually they age out, right? And graduate onto something else, but also to give them the tools to get to that point.
Yeah. It's like having your kid 28 years old still living with you. It's like, come on, man.
Right.
I know you're safe and you're comfortable, but all right, it's time to move on.
Right.
Yeah. But once again, that's very strategic because it's the idea of growth, right? If it's like, hey, if you're here for more than 2 years like that, now you really have to question, right? Where are you progressing to? So, what type of things? What type of people come in as far as what do people prep? How do they utilize the kitchen? What'd you say? 8 burners, fryers? My dream world. Geez, come on.
So they utilize it in various ways. There's a lot of farmers market businesses. I'll say that. Farmers market based businesses. So Thursday and Friday tend to be pretty busy because people are prepping and going out to farmers markets. And even through the pandemic, farmers markets have been designated as essential services, which has been good. They haven't been closed. And which was something that when this happened in March and so forth, I was sweating because if they closed farmers markets, then it meant that all these people that, to be honest, are really my coworkers and people that I care about a lot were going to be facing shutting their businesses down. So mercifully, that did not happen. And so a lot of farmers market based businesses, we, for whatever reason, and this is not necessarily by design or not, but we've got a lot of plant-based businesses. So we've got Pachamama, which does kind of this Latin street food thing, and they're plant-based, and Maya's Cajun Kitchen, which is Cajun plant-based stuff. I just signed a new entrepreneur, The Fresh Flavor, that does plant-based Indian food. So a lot of things along those lines. And then we've got some people that are, roasting whole hogs. So there's a mother and daughter team that work out of the kitchen called One More Bite Bakery, and they're at several different farmers markets, and they're just the 2 sweetest women in the whole world. And So everybody in the walk-in refrigerator has their own shelf, right?
Yeah.
It's labeled, right? Your business name. And there's a guy, Phoenix Le Champ Roasters, and he roasts whole pigs and chickens in the Filipino tradition, right?
Yeah.
And he does these big takeout meals. Anyway, so these women from the bakery come in one morning, and there's just a whole pig in the walk-in, and they sent me a text message at like 7 a.m, like, what the hell is this? You know,
Yeah.
Two eyeballs looking back at them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all about
it.
The pork, but man, when that face is looking at you, like that's a different experience. Yeah.
Right.
So we need to go. There was 2 questions I had of that. Right? Is a whole pig? Like you have the capabilities for him to be able to do that?
To roast a whole pig? No. So
okay.
Prior to the, he was holding the pig there to keep it cold.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Prior
Gotcha.
To the pandemic, he was doing pop-up dinners around the city in partnership with a couple different Filipino chefs. And he's got this, it's spit, but it's kind of this little trailer contraption thing. And the pig rotates and roasts real evenly. And I've been to his pop-up dinners, and they're unbelievable.
Dude, anytime
but now he's doing...
Now
he's doing roasted chicken, and he's not roasting the whole hogs anymore, which makes me sad.
Yeah, it makes me sad. Yes,
but it makes the bakers real happy, so that's fine.
Right? Have to walk into the look at. Yeah. So of the people that are, because that's something really interesting to think about, is of the people who are in your kitchen, utilizing your kitchen. What would you say a percentage of them are all in, as far as like that's their gig, right? It's not a side thing. It's like, hey, this is we've taken the plunge.
Really good question. I've never been asked that. Half to 2/3.
Okay.
Would be a guess.
Half to 2/3 are all in.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And that number has gone up since the pandemic. So there's a guy named Dan Medlin who operates a trailer called Goat and Ram, which does pizzas, and he builds it as like a mobile bakery, but they do pizzas primarily. And when bars and tap rooms were shut down, what he did was he figured out this loophole that tap rooms could open if they had food. So he went around to all these tap rooms that were closed, and he said, "Hey, I'll pull my trailer up and make pizzas if you guys want to open up." And they said, "Absolutely."
Hell yeah.
So he goes to like Chupacabra Tap Room and Mesa and a bunch of different places around the valley and makes these unbelievable pizzas with local ingredients. And he was working at a bakery and got laid off. And he said, "I've been working on this kind of on the side, rehabbing this trailer, building this thing." And he's like, "Now I got nothing but time." And he flew through the county permitting process super quick. And before I knew it, he was in there making pizza dough and selling pies. Man.
Yeah, that's inspiring, man. That's inspiring, right? Because you know, we hear about like through this whole thing. You know, Luke and I are very close to the food and beverage scene here in Arizona. So I mean, it's one of the industries that's most impacted, right?
Yeah.
And I don't think we've seen the impact of it quite yet, because I've been surprised of like, all right, like pretty much every place is still open. There've been a handful that have closed. But to almost, I don't want to say the understory of it, but it's cool to see like these entrepreneurs of like, hey, dude, I got laid off. I was waiting for this chance to take the plunge. Yeah. They eliminated a choice for me. Let's do this.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And there's probably 2 or 3 other businesses that are in that kitchen that same story. You know, where they were working for a caterer or a bakery or whatever, and that bakery or catering company folded or closed, or they got laid off. And they're like, "Well, this is something that I've always wanted to do, and this has been the kick in the pants that I needed to start it." So and the cool thing about that, to me, that story about the guy in the pizza trailer, you know, is that he had enough understanding of there's another business, in this case, you know, beer halls that are hurting, and this is a way to generate revenue for both of us. Like, I've got this trailer, I need to make pizzas, and there are no food truck rallies, right?
Yeah.
Because people can't congregate. But if a bar serves food, they can be open, right?
Yeah.
And he's knocking it out of the park.
Yeah, it's innovation. You're back against the wall. It's like, let's see if this works. Yes, yeah,
right,
yeah. So let's go outside of Local First for a little bit. I know working in the food and beverage industry, there's usually not a lot of free time to check out other establishments, right? But yeah, but when you get a chance, like for you, of being able to experience all of these different cities and the culinary that, you know, the food that they bring, what do you like to do in Arizona to experience food and beverage?
Oh, tacos. I mean, that's the cheater's answer. But I grew up in the Midwest, and, you know, Mexican food in the Midwest is kind of like saying Taco Bell is Mexican food. It's like, it's not really a fair.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, right? Or like, what is it? The Panda takeout is Chinese food, right? Like,
Panda Express. Yeah.
Panda Express. That's right. It's not an accurate representation of.
Sure.
And so, of the places that I've lived, like, I've never been somewhere where you can get legitimate, authentic Mexican food. And so that was just revelatory for me. Like, when I lived in Seattle, you can get, it's the best Asian food I've ever had in my life. Right. And, because there's a huge influx of people from that part of the country, or part of the world, that live there, and they bring an authenticity to it. And to me, that's what's so great about traveling. And, you know, I've been fortunate to live in a bunch of different places, but traveling, for sure, that's the first thing that I do. Is, you know, we decide that we're going to travel. I'm showing stuff to my wife. She's like, oh my God.
6 months
on the beach.
Months.
Right. 6 months ahead. She's like, I'm trying to lay on the beach and, you know, read a magazine. I'm like, yeah, but look at this cheeseburger that we're going to eat in Portugal. She's like, you're an idiot. So,
yes.
But yeah, there's, and to go around to different taco shops, and I like being, or in Tucson, oh mercy, wow, South Tucson taco shops are out of control.
I've never been to South Tucson shops, but I like just even in the you know, main part of downtown, or a little bit out of downtown. It's
right.
Yeah.
I like to be somewhere where, this goes for any food, but I like to be somewhere where I'm at a disadvantage as far as language goes.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I will say, what would you order? Or I'll just like follow somebody in line, like, I'll have what he has. And like, I don't know. I will eat literally anything.
Yeah.
Which, you know, sometimes is a curse and a blessing. But that's like, I want to, right? You know, I want to eat what the locals eat. I want to eat what, you know, what the guy who grew up in Sonora would eat. Yeah. Not the guy who grew up in Dayton, Ohio.
Right.
You know, like my default, like carne asada, which is great. Carne asada is great, right?
Yeah.
But how many steak tacos have I eaten in my life, truly?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But dude, when so my Luke's been there several times. Max's place, my wife's cousin Max lives in like the Tanque Verde area of Tucson. He knows all the great places. Like, oh, dude, you got to go to this place. And he told me about was it cabeza, which is like the head meat. And I was like, what? Like what? And I ate a whole one, like up by, like this thing was like 6 pounds. And I was like, oh, like I know what I call it, head meat. Like my head felt just like a brick. Just
afterwards,
it was so delicious.
Cabeza tacos are so good.
So good, dude. Good. It was not a good choice as my first meal of the day, but like it was such the most pleasurable misery I've ever been in. Yeah.
There's 2 places near me. I live at the 24th Street in Osborne-ish. Okay. And there's one place when I drive to Mesa to get on the 202, it's just a guy with a cart, and he just has a handwritten sign that says cabeza. And I've stopped there in the morning and had like 4 tacos at 9 a.m. And like, you know, unapologetically, just grease running down my hand.
You got your foot up on the fire hydrant, just like, whatever. I'm doing this.
Yeah. So, but unbelievable. Yeah. And I never would have had that experience living anywhere else, or certainly from the culinary tradition that I came from, right? You know, like I tell the story, like when I went to culinary school, I was super young and just an idiot, and I had never had a real mushroom. Every mushroom I had ever eaten in my life had come out of a can. And so I thought, I don't like mushrooms.
Yeah.
And then when I was in culinary school, the rule was you don't have to like everything, but you have to taste it, which did not fit my uneducated Midwestern boy palate. Like, y'all got coney dogs here?
What's that? Oh, that's when you put the spaghetti with the chili and the
with the chili and cheese. So I ate mushrooms the first time. I was like, these are amazing. And they're like, yeah, well, that's what a mushroom is. Dumb.
Yeah. Right.
That was my first experience. And like, it's what that is it was contempt prior to investigation. It was like not liking something, having never experienced it.
Sure.
And so I kind of allowed myself to not have that, or pushed myself to not have that. And I experienced things, that I knew. And that's how you wind up eating cabeza tacos at 9 in the morning.
Like I remember it was like a Tuesday at like 9 a.m. and I'm just like on like a park bench, just like, what did I do? Like I had to lay outside for a little bit. The AC wasn't
9 a.m. Just meat sweat. Jesus, what have I done?
Yeah. Everybody knew. Yeah. Yeah. So for you, like when all's said and done, Gabe, for you, I mean, I'm gonna say beyond Local First, but just for you as what you want to do, what does that big picture look like for you?
Sure. You talk professionally, or like you want to know, like,
what would you like? When all is said and done, what would you like people to say about Gabe Gardner? I didn't say when your dad, but that was a bad, that was.
That's bad. I don't like that question.
Please write your eulogy right now. No.
I didn't really know what you were asking at first. I was like, well, I'd like to, I want to redo our backyard. Does that count?
Do you know
like
somebody?
Some grass. Yeah. Gosh, what I would like to see professionally is a food system that is localized and self-sufficient and champions diversity and inclusivity and different ways of doing things, right? So sure. The food system in this state is, I don't want to say broken, but it's fractured, right? So there are people that make an effort to grow really interesting, flavorful, nutrient-dense foods and work on biodiverse farms. They tend to, by choice or by necessity, sell to a certain type of restaurant, right? So that cabeza taco guy that I get in tacos from at 9 a.m., like, probably not like buying, organic cilantro from a local farm, right?
Yeah.
He's probably buying it from Food City, and it was grown in the central coast of California or somewhere in Mexico and trucked here, and the carbon footprint and the human toll and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I would like to see a food system that where the finance of it is not prohibitive, and that good food is available to all people, right? So because you're growing this nutrient-dense, flavorful, interesting food, it shouldn't be the exclusive entree of well-to-do people, right? Like that should be available to everybody.
Sure.
Because it's good and because it's grown here, and it raises up the workers, it raises up the farmers, the guy who delivers it, the person who cooks it, and it supports all of that in a more holistic way than the system that we have now.
Mm-hmm.
Drop the mic on that one.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
right. That's my hippie soapbox. It's a remnant from my grad school days. So.
Dude, that was great.
I'm going to email you guys my thesis after this.
Please do. Please do. More importantly,
you're welcome.
Let's hear more about that backyard. Like, I want to hear more about the backyard. No, Gabe, that's huge, man. That's huge. And it's so cool to see. I don't know. That's one thing that really drew us to Arizona beer was its connection to the environment here in Arizona, right? Preserving the Verde River and using reclaimed water to make beer, right? It's all, that was Scottsdale, where, city of Scottsdale. But these are things that are almost sending signals out to the rest of the world of like, hey, this is an example of like, this is shit you can do, right? You can make river conservation cool, right? Like when I did the episode with Chip from Sinagua Malt, at the end of them, like, hey, so for somebody listening, like, what can they do to help this cause? And he's like, drink beer made with Sinagua Malt. It's not that hard. That was to support it. Like, the more that you drink of it, the more you buy it, the more it's in demand, and it's cool, man. It's cool to see Arizona being kind of at that forefront on some of those things.
Yeah, and I think he and you hit it on the head, where if you can make that a cool thing, then it's not, like I said, the exclusive entree of rich people, right? Yeah. Like if it's the cool thing to do, if it's the normal thing to do, right? Like now, if you take like a farmer's market, there's a lot of people that shop at farmer's markets because it's an event and it's a thing to do, but then they're also going to Fry's or Costco or whatever. So the farmer's market becomes like, and not anything against farmer's markets, but it becomes like you're walking your dog around, you're buying a $6 coffee and maybe a Danish, and it's something to do on a Saturday morning.
Sure. Yeah.
If we could shift people's perception of what a farmer's market is towards, well, this is where I shop because that's the food that I value and is best for me and best for the economy and best for my state and best for the people that I care about, right?
Yeah. So do you think it's go ahead.
Well, I have a question for you guys.
Sure.
So I understand that you're beer nerds, if I can use that, because that's not a derogatory term, is it?
No, yeah, I'm a little pissed, but we're good.
No, you're looking at Zoom or I punched you.
Hold on, I'm going to turn my video off for a second. Punch the air. Yeah.
Beer enthusiasts, let's say that, right?
Sure.
How did you get from doing a podcast about beer to being interested in doing food? I'm sure you get this question all the time, and so if it's old hat, I'm sorry.
It's actually the first time we've got it. Like I usually jump the gun of saying, here's how we got into it. Right. So I started Tap That AZ, 2017 was the first episode, January 2017. And did it for a few years. The first, or I still do it, but like my first, probably 2 years into it, maybe about a year into it, actually, my first experience with like a really cool food story was when I did an episode with Helio Basin and Tamara Stanger, right? Tamara Stanger from Cotton and Copper. She was with Helio Basin. Great. Yeah. And I remember my first experience going into Helio Basin, and I'm looking at the menu. I'm like, what? Like, this is a rabbit taco? Like, what is going? Like, we're looking like this is, because we weren't prepared for it. Like, we were there for the beer, and we look at, and we're like, we're adventurous. We're like, that's pretty cool. So order the food. This girl brings it out, and then she leaves, and then the guy who was our server was like, dude, he's like, that's a big deal. He's like, she never comes out of the kitchen. That was Tamara. That was our chef. I'm like, oh, no shit. So I'm like, dude, tell her to come back out. We want to talk to her about the tacos. So she comes back out, and we're like, this is awesome. Like, we didn't know what to expect, right? So that was my first real interest into like, wow, like this is, because my grandmother owned a restaurant all growing up, and it was like I lived in a 5,000 person town, so it was the restaurant. That was it. I think that's even the sign that just said the restaurant, right? Right next to the gas station. But
I've been to Youngstown, I know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and you came out alive, so that's an accomplishment.
Live to tell the tale.
Yeah. So
to piggyback off of what you're saying a little bit as well, when we were doing, so we did the Arizona Beer Book. That was Eric and I's first big project.
Mm-hmm.
And something that we realized pretty early on, because Eric's been into craft beer longer than I have. I'm, 24 years old now, so I've only been drinking beer for a few years. But I
legally.
Yeah, I've only been drinking craft beer for probably like 2.5 years now. And right about that time was when I met up with Eric, and that's how I found him, was I found this podcast about beer. So we started coming from someone who hasn't been in craft beer long. I noticed pretty early on that if you pull 10 people off of the street, maybe 2 of the 10, maybe 3 of the 10 know what a growler is. Whereas if you're a craft beer person, you know about what growlers are and crowlers are, and you know how many potentially locally craft breweries are in your area. Whereas if you don't really know about local craft beer, you don't realize that there's probably 3 in your area alone, especially if you're in like a Tempe. There's, several within a few miles. So the education factor wasn't there, but the quality of craft beer is. And Eric and I always say, once you start drinking local craft beer, you're never really going to go back to drinking other stuff. Maybe you pick it up occasionally because Miller Lite's cheaper, but never do you really prefer drinking a Miller Lite over, say a Scottsdale Blonde or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it's the same way with food. I think, a lot more people know that there's local restaurants than know that there's local breweries, but people don't necessarily know the scale of it, and they don't know about where they're getting their food from, where their chefs are getting their food from, and the stories behind the restaurants themselves. And so, Eric and I have very similar values in that we want to support local, but we also want to be able to eat and drink the best food and beer and whatever else possible. And so really just trying to educate people about these amazing experiences that we get to have at a place like Arizona Wilderness or Superstition Meadery, or even something totally different like Rival Farms, where, they're not only growing watermelon or hops, but they're also growing hemp out back. It's like there's too many amazing local farms and breweries and restaurants that someone's got to start, educating. Not that other people aren't educating, but that's like our entire focus is educational, then entertaining.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that education piece is huge. Like to be able to, so you guys know and understand and appreciate that, right? Both on the food and on the beer side. But to realize that, and what Luke said is that, there might be 3 great breweries, within 2 miles of your house and you not know about it. And you're a beer drinker. Like that to me is bananas, right? Yeah. And so to open people's eyes and to help them realize that not only is this product delicious, right? It's better for you physically, right? It's better for, like I've said 100 times in our conversation, it's better for the economy, better for the people who are making it, right? You're supporting real people that you can make a connection with, and it makes for a better society, which sounds like some hippy-dippy nonsense, but it's true.
We're in, man. We're in.
We couldn't agree more. Like the closest local brewery to me is Oso. It's probably like a half a mile away. And I'm pretty sure on their tap list at all times, they have a charity brew that more often than not is going to a local organization. So not only do you support those local jobs, not only do you often support local things like Sinagua Malt, which is local conservation, but then there's the charity layered on top of it. You don't really get that at all from like a massive AB InBev type brewery. And if they are doing it, it's very rarely affecting your local community within a handful of miles, where you just shift to buying arguably a better local product and you get all of those added benefits, and you don't really have to do anything but maybe pay $1 more per pint.
Right.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, man.
And the story, man, that's what we another mic drop. All right, my turn. My turn. All right.
Yeah.
I got to warm up a little
You're
bit.
the only one that I'd like you to physically drop that. Whatever you're getting ready to say,
hold on.
Epic, man.
Hold on. I got to take this off. And got to unscrew this, and then,
You need to get a quick release for that microphone just so you can drop it whenever need be.
Yeah. Dude, I can throw it at any time I want. I can just chuck it.
I love it.
Yeah. But Gabe, that's our thing, man, is story. We want to tell the story. Like we want to, I don't know, just from what I've seen over recent years is the camera seems to have been turned around, right? The camera seems to have been turned around to like, hey, look what I'm eating. Hey, I'm going to this place. Look at where I'm eating. I'm eating all this stuff. This place is cool. Like, what about the people that are making it? Like, what about the people that are working 90 hours a week to pursue their dream, right? Like, that's what. And those are the great stories. Like, we want to follow Tamara Stanger and Brett Vibber. And if people have listened to every episode up to this, I think we've mentioned their names every single episode because we love them so much, you know.
Yeah.
But there's so much depth behind it. And John Buford from Arizona Wilderness, we were just, you know, BSing with him one day, and he's like, dude, you know, someone said to him, like, dude, every beer on that board has a story. And he's like, like, everything we put up there, there's something behind it. There's some depth. There's, you know, that's inspiring, man. Like, it's creativity, but it's also just, I don't know. I always look back at my upbringing, and it was a combination of creativity and blue collar. So that's what I'm drawn towards, and that's food and beverage to me.
You're absolutely right. Yeah, every entrepreneur that I work with has a story, and every small business has a story and struggles. And just from an anthropological standpoint, that's so fascinating to me. But if the work that I do or Local First does can be one small piece of helping those businesses succeed to the benefit of all the things that we've talked about, then at the end of the day, you know, the 37 hours of Zoom calls and the 12 hours worth of emails has all been worth it, you know?
Yes. So. Yeah. Well, Gabe, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think this is the beginning of something pretty awesome because of the values that what Local First has and what we have. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited for us to
I appreciate you guys asking me to do it. And anytime you need a recommendation on a local restaurant or entrepreneur or something new that's happening, let me know.
Absolutely, man.
Your way.
We got to come down and see that kitchen too, man. I'm going to do like cartwheels across the flat top like that. Dude, I want a flat top. So our best friends live across the street from us, and it was Chris's birthday, and his wife bought him a Blackstone, and she was like, hey, will you help me carry it? I'm like, hell yeah, because that's like mine too. Like, we hang out so much, like I get to use that anytime. Right. So you got me a Blackstone for Chris's birthday. Yeah. But no, man, I look at that, the pictures and I saw the videos of your guys' place, and it's beautiful, man. It's really cool. So yeah, dude, you guys are doing good stuff.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Good talking to you guys.
All right, buddy. Well, we're going to go 6:59 p.m. on August 13th. I don't know why I said that, but I was just looking at the corner of my computer, and that was my outro. Awesome. Gabe, thanks so much, man. We appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
All right. You too, man. Bye-bye.
Later, man. Bye.
Well, everyone, there you have it. Gabe Gardner of Local First Arizona. Make sure you follow Local First on social media, as well as A Taste of AZ. Also, subscribe to our YouTube channel below, like the video, and we'll see you next time.